Hey folks, very warm welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to be doing something a little bit different, and we're on the narrowboat and not the van. We're going to be fitting a stern gland greaser and showing how to fill the chamber correctly. I'm going to begin the video by showing you how it looks once the installation has been completed. Of course they will look different on your narrowboat. These are the bits and pieces you're going to need to complete the task. This is the 8mm nylon tube. What transfers the grease from the pump down to the stern gland itself. It comes with compression fittings that are needed for both ends of the tube. You'll notice the chamfered shoulder inside the nut. This is what will compress the tin onto the tube itself. Once they've been compressed, you can disassemble them again, apart from the olive fitting itself, for ease of fitting to both the gland and to the tube greaser. Pay particular attention when tightening these to remember that they are brass, which is a soft metal. Don't over tighten, but make sure that they are tightened enough that the grease won't leak out. I need a 90-degree bend on my application, so I'm going to warm the tube up and bend it and then hold it still until it goes cold, and it should stay in place. You could of course buy a 90-degree elbow for this, however it wasn't suitable for my application. Let's have a closer look at the body of the stern tube greaser. The tap at the top is what pushes the grease out of the base of the tube, and the base of the tube is also how it's fitted to the hull of the boat, and also where the nylon hose fits to the tube, using the brass fittings. As can be seen in this short demonstration. You will of course note that at this stage I'm only tightening anything by hand, and haven't yet compressed the tube into the fitting itself. So the greaser comes in 3 individual parts, as can be seen now. Both the top and bottom screw out of the main body. This base part is the grease exit chamber, and the top part that screws up and down is the plunger that actually pushes the grease under pressure through the grease chamber. One of the common mistakes that people often make is trying to fill the grease chamber with the plunger still attached. Later on I will show you how to fill it and ensure that the chamber is fully filled with grease and not half filled with air. You'll notice that the components are relatively simple engineering, and there is actually very little that can go wrong with these things. The biggest issues would be incorrect filling of the grease tube and over tightening the brass components. So let's pop it all back together and then we'll start actually fitting it to the boat itself. Prior to fitting this, I had a grease gun attached to the stern tube that was sited next to the swim plates at the very back of the boat, or more to the point for the purists amongst us, the stern. You will of course have to find a suitable location on your own boat, and I would suggest that this is somewhere where you can easily get to it. I have chosen to locate mine in the equipment locker. On a lot of boats this will actually be located in the engine room. However, my engine room is midships on this boat. As you can see, I've simply screwed the base plate to the location that I want the stern tube greaser to be. To get to the stern tube packing gland, I need to remove all of these panels. I do apologise for the light in this next part of the video. It is extremely dark down in the dirty hole. You can see here the old greaser that I was talking about, and I now need to remove that from the packing gland. Fortunately, it's a relatively easy thing to remove as it just screws off. The hardest part being turning yourself into a contortionist to try and get into the thing. Ferrule is now loosened. All I need to do now is turn the greaser itself and the pipe will remove. So here I've just compressed the olives onto the tube at both ends. And before fitting, I'm just doing a final check to make sure that the threads are the same size as the one that I've actually taken off. And prior to compressing the fittings, I've made sure that the tube is long enough to reach from the greaser to the packing. Having cleaned the thread on the packing gland, I'm now going to fasten in the new fitting. Note that I've removed the fitting from the tube. It allows for ease of access. So here I'm just nipping up the fitting with a pair of pump pliers, as I found it very difficult at this stage to get a spanner in to tighten it up enough. I will stress again though not to over tighten, and always start threading by hand so that you don't cross thread. I generally make sure I have 2 or 3 of the threads into anything before I start using anything mechanical to tighten it with. I now need to drill a hole in my cupboard to gain access for the tube, and you can now see why I needed a 90-degree bend in the tube. Time for a quick clean up so none of the sawdust gets into the grease. And I'll now start threading the tube down into the packing gland. And we're about to get a quick visit from Rambo, who's been bringing me presents all day long to help me out. At this stage, do not fasten to the stuffing box. It is now time to fit the fittings to the base of the greasing tube. Again, using my fingers just to get the first few threads in, and then I'll use the pump pliers again to make sure it's fitted and fully tight. And it's at this stage where we fit the compressed tube to the greaser base. And another little visit from Rambo. The whole thing is now nipped up with a couple of spanners just to make sure that it's nice and tight. In this section I'm going to show you how to correctly fill the greaser tube with grease. Point of note that you should always use the correct stern gland grease for this particular task. So the first job is to fully unwind the plunger. Then unscrew and separate from the greaser tube. Put the plunger to one side and now we're ready to start packing with the grease. So as you can see, I'm just using a spatula to fill the grease chamber, and I'll do this until it's approximately half full, making sure that I'm packing it in as I go and leaving no air bubbles. You can see here that I've half filled the chamber and cleaned off the end. And we're now ready to start the same process from the other end. The only difference being this time, make sure that the first few blobs of grease gets pushed right down into where it meets the first lot of grease. If you do try to fill the chamber with the plunger still in, or with it still screwed in its base, find that it creates a huge airlock and you can't actually compress the grease into the tube. So, a quick clean up before we take it back to the boat. Screw the plunger back onto the top, and this will push out about 7 or 8 mil of grease from the bottom of the tube. You can either scrape this off, or as I've done, leave it on, and the reason I've left it on is because the actual chamber of mine is already empty. Being this on an existing fit, it would be better to scrape it off. So back at the newly fitted base, we can now screw the greaser tube onto the base. You will notice that I still haven't connected the greaser tube to the stern gland stuffing box, and this is predominantly because I don't want to be pushing air directly into the stern gland. So I'm going to start turning the top of the greaser now to start pushing the grease down into the tube. And I'll continue to do this until there is a gap of air in the bottom of the tube of about 20 millimeters. As you can see here. So it's finally time to connect the greaser tube to the stern gland stuffing box. Once that's completed, I will operate the greaser until the tap goes firm. It's at this point I'll know that there's sufficient grease in the stuffing box to stop any water coming back over the prop. It's also important to make sure that there is no grease coming out of any of the joints. I hope you've enjoyed the video. I hope it's been of use to you. If you have, please like and subscribe. Thanks ever so much. See you again soon. Take care now.